welcome to episode 5 of Meet the Brewer Online, hosted by Mother Mark's Public House in Limerick. We welcome Lineman Brewery all the way from Dublin, and a big welcome to Mark and Vivian.
Thanks for joining us, and I suppose a massive thank you goes out to Mark from Lineman for joining us. We enjoyed the beer this weekend, and we poured 4 of their beers. And I was just telling Mark just before we let you all onto the call, it's the first brewery to sell out. So basically, the 4 beers are sold out with the exception of Astral Grains, and I think it's either 3 or 4 liters of that left. So I mean, that's a huge push and a huge effort, and I think it just, I suppose, give yourself a pat in the back because it's that's a big deal. So fifth Meet the Brewer, and the fifth one and the first one of the 5 to sell out. You know, and you were up against some well-known well-known competition, which would have been the likes of Kinnegar and White Hag. So you've done exceptionally well.
Fair play. Thanks everybody for picking it up.
But Lineman, right? Tell me, I suppose our first introduction to Lineman was last year, middle of last year. We were putting together our Christmas box, which was 24 beers, Advent box, and we came across the Astral Grains. And when we tasted it, we said absolutely fantastic stuff, definitely worthy of inclusion. But prior to that, we didn't know a lot about Lineman, and I know you're only relatively newish. So maybe give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so you probably got that. Just around that time, we started working with Four Corners, so they were distributing for us nationally. Prior to that, we'd been kind of working mostly around Dublin. I'm from Mallow, so if I was heading down home, I was dropping some stuff to Cork occasionally. So we were getting a bit of stuff into the beer house in Bradley's. But we started the brewery in 2019. So January 2019, I took over the brewery, what was previously Rascal's old kit, out in Green Oak, just outside Dublin on the N7. And I took over their old building. I took some of their tanks. I took their old brew house, which was, prior to them having it, was Galway Bay's first brew house as well. So that, it's got some miles on it, like that kit, So I spent the first 6 months getting the brewery together, getting all the bits and pieces I was missing, renovating the floor, the drains, all that sort of stuff, all the sexy stuff, And so the first beer we brewed was First Light, and it was a grisette, and we did that in bottles and bottle conditioned. It was a mix. It had a proper saison yeast in it, so you couldn't can it. And we put that out in August 2019 was that was released. At the same time, we did Saga, which was a beer that I'd been brewing, home brewing prior to this, because I'd been a home brewer for years, always at it, and I'd some old recipes that I was working on. So Saga was one that I had. Actually, I got the yeast for Saga from a guy in Limerick, a home brewer down in Limerick there, and it was yeast that he'd got from a farmhouse in Latvia, I think. So that was a mixed culture that had all sorts of stuff in it and bugs, and I put that into a tank and said, right, this tank is going to be for mixed fermentation stuff, not clean beer. So the 2 of those went out, and we'd been selling them around the place. We'd been looking to kind of do stuff on draft and get into restaurants and bars around Dublin. That was the initial plan. So around, I think, those 2 we were just selling around December. We had Astral was released for December 2019. So that was kind of, I knew everybody was going to be making imperial stouts, so I made a foreign extra stout. I thought I'd do something a bit different, and so we did that one. And I say that sold quite well for us. I knew that was a good beer, at the start, straight off the mark. So that was going in as a core beer for us, and then we were happy enough with how we got through at that Christmas. We were looking forward to getting through the doldrums in January and kicking on in 2020. And then the lockdown happened. So we were just after getting a delivery of couple of pallets of kegs, our own kegs, and we were going looking for lines around the place. So our whole approach was just shot out of the water, like at that stage, you know.
Just go back, Mark. What made you, I suppose, build or buy a brewery? What drove you to it?
I had no choice, you know. I had no choice. I was working for 21 years before that as an engineer, and I'd been home brewing as a hobby. I was home brewing every 2 weeks. I was brewing, and at least like that was the minimum I was doing. So I was doing this for years, and I built a shed. I'm actually in it at the moment, at the end of the garden, where I had it all set up for brewing out there, and I taps. I had my own little corny kegs, and I was just constantly brewing stuff. I was giving beer away, like, because I was making more than I could get through myself, you know. And I was just mad for beer. Like before that, I was always trying to get unusual beers. When I moved to Dublin in 1996, like there was the Porterhouse, was just after opening in Parliament Street. And other than that, there was very few kind of options, you know. Everything was just Guinness, Heineken, the usual stuff. So I used to go to the Porterhouse a lot, and I used to drink anything they had on the bottle menu. Like, you know, I was trying everything. Yeah. Going abroad, I was trying to drink stuff. I was always trying to find something different, you know. I just love beer. Like I'll try any type of beer, you know, anything at all. There's very few types of beer that I don't like. So I just, as soon as after 20 years in the job, I was kind of getting fed up with it. They were doing redundancies, and I had applied for the first round of redundancies, and I was rejected. So I was gutted. So I was hanging, I was hanging in limbo for another year, and I eventually got it, because I'd always said to Vivian, like, if I get the redundancy, I'm opening a brewery, you know. So I wanted to open it on my own. It's just the brewery is 100% owned by me. I've got, you know, so I've only built it with what I could afford to build it with. So it's pretty rudimentary, you know. We work with what we got, but on the plus side, I can make what I want down there. You know, there's no, you know, I don't have a huge amount of debt hanging over my head on it, you know. So we're just keeping it nice and straightforward, and getting the good beer out. And that's it. I think we're doing okay, like with what we've got. You know, we're working. We can't make triple IPAs and stuff like that because we just don't have the kit to make it. Like, so.
It's kind of funny, because if you consider, as you said, you kicked it off in 2019. First beer was out. You started getting going. You ordered in the kegs, and next thing you were locked down. You know, but if you were carrying a massive debt over you,
yeah,
we probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
We'd be gone. Yeah, that's the only saving grace. We were able to keep our costs down and just, you know, get through it. Like, we started canning more. At the start, I wanted to do bottle conditioned beer. Like, what I wanted to do was bottle conditioned beer and kegged beer, and I wanted to do a lot of like barrel aged and sour stuff. But like, you got to pay the bills, so you can't wait around for 3 years for stuff to be ready to sell. So, like, I love making stouts and dark beer anyway, so we just cracked on and got those out. And everybody was saying to me, you won't be able to make enough, you know, you won't make a living out of selling stouts, you know, there isn't enough, you have to make IPA. So at the start, I was very reluctant to make any IPAs. I just wanted to make, you know, different types of beers. As far as I was concerned, there was enough IPAs there already, you know, there's plenty of IPAs, and you know, why bother, you know? there's so many good ones there, why would you bother, you know? So, but look, you know yourself, IPAs sell. And when we did go making an IPA, we started making a few different IPAs. We wanted to make ones that were a bit different. So we did a West Coast IPA, because there wasn't many around when we made it. I think it's coming back a bit. I think there's a bit of a push towards, you know, those type of beers.
I think we wicked the Wolf on a number of weeks ago, and actually Quincy was talking about the West Coast IPAs. And exactly what you said, making a bit of a comeback and being kind of in trend again a little bit. You know?
I think so, for variety, like, because, you know, at the moment you go in, you get an IPA, it's hazy. Unless they say it's not hazy, it's hazy. It's not that long ago that wasn't the case, you know. But hazy is now the default, you know. So,
well, I can recall a time where people would hand back a hazy point.
Yeah,
thinking there was something wrong with it, you know. Whereas we've gone totally towards it now, which is, it's great, it's fantastic. And just for the benefit of everyone, you mentioned Vivian. Vivian's your wife. How does it work living and working together, and a brewery and young kids and all that good stuff.
It's totally we're immersed in it, you know. We're living, sleeping, eating this, you know. Especially when the kids were off school. That's the undertone. That's the current. Yeah. She's actually just after joining me here now. So sorry, she's distracted me. Yeah, with the kids when they were in lockdown, Vivian was at home with them. You
have to change what you're about to say. Everything was great. Fantastic. Yeah.
Recalculating.
So I suppose you got it. Go on. Go ahead.
It actually works out fine. Like, we get on well, and we've got our own different kind of responsibilities, you know. So, like, Vivian does all the designs for our cans and does all that side of things, and she does a lot of the work, kind of, you know, contacting customers and kind of push, you know, getting out and doing a bit of marketing on the beer and stuff like that, as much as you can at the moment, you know. So
yeah, and I suppose it's exceptionally difficult at the moment. But as you said, you've moved to cans. How is that going for you? How has sales been going, or how have you been finding the market, or how have you been received?
I think that, well, the cans, obviously, here she is now.
Hi.
The cans are the cans have been good for us, you know. I was actually saying to Vivian, a couple of months after this whole thing started, we've been getting kegs, doing bottle conditioning, all this sort of stuff. And as soon as that all stopped, all we had was cans. So we just concentrated on the cans and the artwork for the cans and kind of what sort of beers we could put into the cans that would sell. So it allowed us to focus. It simplified things in one regard, you know, that we weren't splitting a certain amount of the batch for kegs and figuring out how much we would sell on draft, how much would we sell on cans. There's no bottles at all at the moment for us. So it's been kind of good in regard that we can just focus completely on it, you know. And the fact that we were with Four Corners now for distribution has taken that side of it off, you know, where I was trying to get deliveries of malt in or something for a brew, and then I was heading off out in with a few cases in the back of the car, dropping them down to an off license down the road and coming back, and, you know, there was too much work. We had to kind of simplify things.
And I suppose, what's the one good thing that's come out of it? Because I know simplification probably is the answer, but what's the one good thing that's come out of COVID-19 and the change in what you've done? Have you learned something that you didn't think you would do, or have you learned something that you didn't? I once you didn't know, but you thought there was a path, and you've changed your mind on it. You know, is there something that you wouldn't have done that you're now doing?
Well, I think it changed our plans in terms of the timing of stuff that we wanted to do anyway. You know, like we had to do certain things we didn't plan to do early, like export. We had to bring that forward because we couldn't rely on the government not shutting everything down and us being out of business.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's kind of it's made me appreciate what the other stuff that I want to do that we can't do at the moment, you know. In terms of that, you know, we're focused on the stuff that we have been doing. We've got a bit of discipline. It's been forced discipline on us rather than us just doing whatever we want at a whim, you know. So there's very little positive to say about it, to be honest with you.
You're here. Yeah, you're here.
Exactly. And I suppose at the beginning there was such a rush of people that were interested in Irish craft beer and supporting local, and that really had helped us, because at that stage, I suppose we were so new and so many people hadn't heard of us, but then they were all being furloughed and locked down, and they had plenty of chance to drink and money to spend on drink, and they decided to explore, and they discovered us, and that was great. Because of that, we got a lot more check-ins and on taps and that kind of.
That's true. I think the fact that people weren't out drinking their pints of Guinness, maybe they tried looking for alternatives, and maybe they tried Astral Grains when they wouldn't have done it before, you know. So
yeah, I think even for us here, it's quite interesting because, like, okay, look, we're very vested in the industry. We're very vested in knowing what's been done and who's doing what, but I'll hold my hand up and say we're probably 60%ers. We know 60% of what's happening, what's been made, and the other 40% we don't, right? And that's just because we can't. Whereas when this lockdown kind of came in, it gave us more time to be able to look at different things and different breweries and different beers, right? I mean, even like there's two good off licenses here in town. We have an O'Brien's, and Joe's great above an O'Brien's, and then we have number 21. And like on a weekly basis, we go up there and peruse to see what have they got. You know, is there something different? Is there something unusual? Is there something that we should be looking at? You know, and we weren't really doing that before. We were kind of more reliant on the likes of the Four Corners or Grand Cru coming in with cans or coming in with a sample and saying this is new, or you know. So I think it's led to a big change, I think, in the mindset. So I mean, Vivian, I know you joined a bit late, right? And I know why we were talking during the week.
Yeah, you know why.
So I hope they're on.
Screaming in the background, you know, when I disappear.
I hope they're all settled down, right?
Kind of.
Yeah, but as I was just saying to Mark, like the beer is sold very, very well, right?
Good.
Being our 5th Meet the Brewer, we have essentially sold out, with the exception of 4 litres of Astral Grains. All the other beer is gone, right? So you're the first brewery to do that, right? So I think that's an absolute fantastic credit to you, right? And to the beer that you've made.
That's amazing. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and look, with the guys here, guys and girls here joining and drinking and enjoying, right? So in front of me, right, I actually have the Undertone, right? And
Me too.
I don't like dark lagers.
Well,
Well, I don't, right? And I'm guilty of telling 1 or 2 people today that I tried it and I didn't like it. I went back to try it this evening again because I felt I was a bit harsh. I tried it on Thursday, and you know what? I am pleasantly surprised as I sit this evening drinking it. It's definitely not what I thought it was when I tasted it Thursday. So you know, it is quite nice. One of the things that I get from it definitely it doesn't seem to be as carbonated, and I know Mark had said this to as some of the other kind of more mainstream beers, but I personally like that, right? Because I mean, I actually, if the truth be told, I love cask beer and I love English style flatter beer. I think it's just a little bit easier to drink, and it's easier to taste it, because I think when you overcarbonate something, and I'm going to use a word that my nephew would use, it becomes spiky.
Yeah.
And it's a great way for a child to explain it. It becomes spiky and it becomes difficult to taste. You know, is that something? I suppose, are you very conscious of that, Mark, or is it just? I'm Vivian. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I won't hold it against you that you're not a fan of dark lagers, but I love that beer, right? That's a hard to sell for us, right? But I brew it so that I can have a couple of kegs here at the house for myself, right? So that, but other than that, like all the beers generally, most of them we do quite low carbonation on them. That's the way I like to drink them as well. And I also think, you know, you do get to taste the beer more. You don't get the if you have too much carbon dioxide in a beer, you get the carbonic acid, like you get the burn off of it on your tongue. And, you know, it's great if you've got an IPA and you want to blast out the aroma off it, right? Give it a good carbonation and it'll lift the aroma out of the beer for you. But, you know, I think for dark beers especially, they're much nicer when they're softly carbonated, and you can actually, you know, they're velvety on your tongue rather than spiky, like you say, you know.
And if just on this one, if you were to describe it, right, and I'm trying to think, it's kind of almost reminds me of almost like a German style dark lager, and but I could be completely wrong on that, right? And I was telling one of the customers earlier on, there was a Bavarian dark lager that we had here in bottle, and it was quite like it. Am I mad or?
No, you're bang on. Like it's like it's kind of like a Munich Dunkel or a Czech dark lager. That's kind of the style that it's in. So it's not got the real dark roasty malt in it that you get in like a Schwarzbier. So it's softer, it's got more caramel malt in it, and it's kind of got that toast crust kind of taste to it, you know.
And tell me this, right? So we don't see a lot of dark lagers being produced by Irish producers. Is it more difficult to produce, or is it just that it's a style that isn't as popular?
It's a harder sell, I think.
Yeah, it's a style that's not as popular, definitely. You're not the first person to say what you said, like, oh, I don't know about dark lager. Or, you know, you go to an off-license and say, oh, I can't sell that now. People won't go for it, you know.
Yeah.
I had another dark lager a while ago and it just didn't go. I'm like, yeah, but try ours. Ours is much better.
You know what? I actually think that I'll be pushing that again when the pubs do open up to get that in on tap, because I think it's a better drink really on a pint of it in the pub than a can kind of drink, you know. But yeah.
And luckily for you, we're pouring growlers, so it's all come out of the beer system that we have here. So it's on draft, yeah. I'm going to say I'm surprised even as I'm sitting here, right? Because we tasted all the beers Thursday morning when we tapped them up, right? Because our customers are fantastic, and they often ask us who's drinking what and who likes what, because we'll say what I like, the certain customers would like the same styles as I would and all that good stuff. So we kind of have to know what we're doing. But when I drank it Thursday, I really wasn't. Maybe it was just me. I wasn't really liking it. As I'm having it this evening, though, it is quite delicious. It really is.
We've brainwashed you, have we?
I felt guilty. I actually felt guilty today. I have no problem saying it. I felt guilty because someone asked me very directly, did I like it? And I said, no, definitely not my style. It wasn't for me. You know, and afterwards I said, geez, I was a little bit harsh on that beer, right? And James said to me, what are you going to drink? And I said, look, give me one of them because I'm just going to have to try it, you know?
Yeah. Look, beer is subjective, you know? Everybody's got their own preference. There's nothing wrong with it, you know? What's a good beer? I don't know. It's what you like, you know?
I think mood does come into it as well when you're drinking a beer, for sure.
Think of that beer now, right? There was a place on the Quays here in Dublin it used to be called the Pifco. I don't know if you know it. It was up near along the Quays near Guinness Brewery. It's gone now since. But they used to have, it was a Czech bar, and they used to have goulash on the menu and dark lager. That's what I used to be stopping in there. If I was going into town, I was finding excuses to go in there for a bowl of goulash and dark lager, and I was in my element.
So obviously, as brewers and brewery owners, you're into your beer. What beers are you drinking at the moment outside of your own beers? What are you liking outside of your own?
Well, Vivian likes all the sour beers that she can get her hands on. Not like fruit kettle sour things, but like the expensive Belgian ones, you know, the lambic and But she's a big fan of the Torrent as well. And
Astral. And Undertone. Astral, Undertone, Torrent, my top three of Lineman anyway. But lots of sours. I like my gooses, and I like it. Pretty puckery and sour. And what else did I? Yeah, stouts and sours. That's my two favorite styles anyway.
I'm kind of getting withdrawal symptoms. Well, I've gone through the withdrawal symptoms and the whole lot for Rasslers in the Porterhouse. That was my regular, that's my go-to beer when I'm in town. And I need it on draft, you know. I have to be at the pub to have it. Other than that, I suppose I'm having lots of lagers at the moment. I'm drinking a lot of German lagers at the moment. So
I'm definitely sensing a trend. So just, I suppose we'll go back to the brewery, right? So for the beer nerds and the brewery nerds amongst us today, tell us a bit more about the brewery. How many hectoliters can you produce? Is there anything funky or fantastic about it that kind of makes it unique, or is it hand built?
The brewery is like I said to you, it's a piece of Irish brewing history, right? Because it was originally the Galway Bay's brew pub, one that they had in Salt Hill. After that, Rascals bought it, and they had it for however many years from when they started until they sold it to me. And it is a very basic English system. Dave Porter kit, if anybody knows their breweries. So it's very like a home brew kit in that you've got 3 vessels. We've got a 800-litre mash tun, a 1,200-litre kettle, and then we've got a whirlpool that was added to it, which is 1,200 litres as well. So we needed the whirlpool. Rascals put the whirlpool onto it. It's a kind of a homemade job, and it's because of the pellet hops. If you're brewing, those systems were originally designed for brewing with leaf hops in English brewing, and you just put a strainer on the bottom of the kettle, and it strains everything through the hop leaves that are coming out, and that's it. You've clear beer going out and into the heat exchanger and into the tanks. But when the pellets, everything is pellet hops now, so you need to transfer the whole lot into a whirlpool, leave it spin and settle so that the hops drop out, and then you transfer it into the fermenter after that. So we've got 3 fermentation tanks at the brewery currently that we use for clean beer. and we can do 50 hectoliters a month on those, and that's 5,000 liters of beer a month. We've got some other barrels that we've got beer in that is aging, and we've got some small conditioning tanks that we have some beer that's got Brett in it that's going to be in there for about 12 months as well. So they're the funky side of things. They're on the other side of the house. Yeah, they're longer term projects. We got first fill bourbon barrels from Cooperage before Christmas, and we put Gigantic was the Imperial Stout we did coming up to Christmas. We put half of that. We did a 2,000 litre batch of that. We put half of it into bourbon barrels. So that was Gigantic then. So that pair of beers went out before Christmas. We've sold them out of the brewery. There's still probably some knocking around the place out there, but yeah, they were in, like, they were expensive barrels that we got, but they were worth it. You know, they were savage. Amount of flavour in them.
It seems to be a trend at the moment, kind of the barrel aged kind of beers. You see a lot more breweries doing it. It's kind of
anything to do something new, you know, or add an extra bit of flavour into it, you know. Like when we do the stouts, Gigantic, if you had it, is the plain one without the barrel aging, and that's an old-fashioned kind of imperial stout recipe. It's not a pastry stout, and I know I see some of the reviews that come in on it, and I know this guy was expecting, you know, a sweet, light, not too much roasty, no, that real astringency and bitterness that you get in the dark malt, and he wasn't expecting that, and you can see that they're disappointed with what they got, right? But that's the way we're making them, right? It's like I said to you earlier on, if we're not really doing hazy IPAs, because there's one of the kids now.
Bring him in. We'll say hello.
He's sick of listening to me talking.
Hello.
Wave, Liam.
Hi.
No, Daddy is working.
He'd happily sit in here now if I gave him a fistful of peanuts.
You know what? I'd see no harm in it. You know, let him sit down there and join in. You know,
nobody else would get a word in, right, Liam?
Just back to the barrel aging and the kind of the funky stuff, right? Because obviously, you know, you got to get the core right before you can, I suppose, crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And you know, we're drinking some of your I suppose what can be considered your core beers, right? And they're quite good. You mentioned barrel aging, but you're also doing some Brettanomycin work. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we do. Like when I started up, I planned to get straight away. I knew it was going to take, you know, between 12 months minimum up to 3 years before we'd have anything coming out of that. So I wanted to get started on it straight away.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, you know yourself, when you're running a business, you have to deal with the day-to-day stuff first, and you're just going, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. Definitely doing that next week. So, like, I only got that stuff started probably around November, October this year with that stuff. So, but that'll be a longer-term project, and that's kind of stuff that interests me. But they'll be very small batches. That's a real niche thing, you know. It
seems to be that it's grown in stature, if I'm being fair, because we'd say we had Kinnegar on a couple of episodes ago, or a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about their funk farm, and then we've Declan, who's a good friend of ours from Otterbank, who's doing some crazy stuff up in Muff, County Donegal as well, right? You know, so I mean, like, actually, do you know what? They're both in Donegal, which kind of, they're quite close. So it seems to be up that side of the world. They're kind of a bit mad into the, you know, mixed fermentations, sours, saisons, that kind of.
You've got a few more up the road from you. There's got Land and Labour. Tom the brewer from Galway Bay has his thing out there in Galway as well, and Sean Coulahan in White Street does a lot of that sort of stuff too up in Longford. But it's stuff that a lot of brewers probably like doing that, you know. So it's kind of a little
it's kind of side projects more than anything. I think, is it kind of? Yeah,
it is. Like, I don't think we could afford to just do that, you know. That wouldn't keep us in business, I think, personally. And to be honest, I like doing lots of different stuff anyway, so I wouldn't like to be constrained by it. The issue you have with that technically as a brewery is keeping one from contaminating the other. You know what I mean? And in terms of packaging and everything like that, it's different. It introduces an awful lot of complexity, and that's kind of like what I was saying earlier on in terms of the lockdown. It simplified what we were doing because all that stuff was stopped. Like there's no even thought about it. The saga that we were doing with the mixed fermentation culture, like we had to drop that because we know where to go with it. Like so, it's just allowed us to kind of, everything is much simpler at the brewery now in terms of getting the production out. We've got our production schedule. We know what we've got coming along the line. We've got our kind of routine, you know, like every 4 weeks we've got a kind of cycle that we work through. And it's enforced discipline on us, but it's not necessarily bad, you know. We get that right, and then we can start doing other stuff.
It was actually quite interesting because in some of your opening sentences, you had said that you intended to bottle your saisons rather than can it, and I was just, I suppose I had a little chuckle to myself because there's a brewer that we know, owner and brewer that we know, who was making a saison, and the mobile canning man arrived. And there was nearly a conniption because he said, "No, you can't put that next or near my equipment." Yeah.
I learned that too. Yeah.
So just right, okay. You've basically built your own brewery, right? And you've got it all going. I know you bought it in. What? Looking back, because I know it's only been a short while, right? What would you have done differently day one, when you decided you were putting the brewery in, other than getting redundancy first round?
Yeah.
What would you have done differently?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I did to make my life difficult was I said, right, we got to do 3 beers for our core range, and we got to do something that's different from what everybody else is doing. I was only looking at it purely from my own perspective as a brewer, right? In terms of what would I brew that would be different that might sell. And I mean, it was really naive because it was impossible to sell because there's a reason why nobody was doing it, like, you know, because nobody went for it. So I went off and I developed 3 beers, you know, that I thought were going to be great. Like these are all different, but the problem we had then when I got out to kind of try and sell it, when we were selling it ourselves, it was easier because you got the feedback directly, you know. And I was going around and people were saying, no, do you have any IPA? Do you have a pale ale? And I was going, no, these are what we're doing. They're different. You know, this is an alternative to that. But really, I suppose if I was going back and doing it again, that I'd give myself a slap in the face and kind of cop on, like make something that you can sell first, and then after that you can start doing other stuff. So that was challenging. Like we ended up destroying a load of the First Lights Grisette that we did because 33 cl bottles of saison, the amount of it that we made, there wasn't a market there for it at the time for us, especially as a new brewery. You know what I mean? People weren't willing to take a punt on it. A lot of people weren't. Some people were, obviously.
Which was very annoying because anybody who tried the beer really loved it. So, oh well.
Lesson learned.
We survived it. Like that's the main thing, you know.
Well, look, you're here today. We're pouring good beer. I mean, you know, that's always the main thing. So maybe why don't you walk me through the beers so that we had? So we had a beautiful undertone. We had the Astral Grains, which we had in can just before Christmas.
Yeah.
We had the Torrent, and then we had the Rabbit Hut. Sorry, how did I even forget that one? Yeah, the Rabbit Hut. So maybe walk us through them and just tell us a little bit about them, and in particular what makes them unique, because they're 4 very unique kind of beers, if I'm being fair.
Well, I suppose we start with we work up through them in strength, I suppose. So the Undertone is the lightest one of the 3 of the 4, and it's, like I said, like I was talking to you about earlier on, it's a beer that I like to drink myself. It's because it's a good sessionable beer. It's low enough ABV, but it's still quite satisfying to drink. You know, it's not watery. You know, I get some beers that are sessionable beers, and they're just, you know, it's just an IPA that's been diluted down to whatever strength. You know, it doesn't transfer across properly. So I think the Undertone has a nice balance in it because there's a bit of residual maltiness in it. You get lots of nice toasty kind of notes off it. You know, it's a kind of like a traditional dark lager in terms of like a Czech or a Southern German lager. So, you know, the big thing with making that for us is to make sure that it is nice and clean and finishes clean so that you can drink it. Not too many esters or anything like that, as it's a lager. So that's one of my favorite beers. Like I like to have that here in the man cave for watching the football or whatever, you know. So, but it's a minority sport, I suppose. Like, you know, we're in dark territory.
I'm going to say I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one, like, because it's got, I think it can appeal to a lot of different, if you're a stout drinker, a porter drinker, maybe try it, you know. It's got a little bit of sweetness like a porter, if you're having an English porter. Yeah, it's
got that lovely refreshing lager taste, because it's dark doesn't mean it's in any way cloying or sticky or anything. It really is clean and refreshing.
It's definitely an easy drinker.
Yeah,
definitely an easy drinker.
You can go at it like and have a couple of pints of it and you're still grand, you know. That's the main thing, you know. It's not it won't give you a surprise attack, you know. You can have 3 pints of that watching a match and then you're grand, you know.
As publicans, that's what we like to hear. You can have a few pints without getting too affected by it, you know. Because, well, to be fair, it's a very Irish thing, right? We drink pints, and to look for a half pint or 2/3. You know, people sometimes look at you going, "Geez, what's wrong with him? You know, is he on an antibiotic or is he?" You know, but like with really strong beers, I mean, I couldn't drink a pint of like even the 8% that you had on, right? I wouldn't drink that by pint if I was going into a bar to drink it. You know, that'd come in. No, I wouldn't, right? I really wouldn't. As much as I like it, I don't want to have. I want to kind of measure it a small bit, you know, and temper it, because you're just going to get too messed up from it.
Well, that's it exactly. And the thing about the higher strength beers is you've got generally you have more intense flavor and everything in them, so you don't really want to be drinking it the same as you would a 4%er, you know. So it's a sipper, you know.
It is. Come on, we move on to the next beauty that you gave us.
Torrent, the porter.
Yeah.
Yeah, Torrent is a one that we brewed first 12 months ago, was it? Around February.
Yeah, it was for this time last year.
As Liam's back again. So just like an American style porter, so it's quite robust. It's got lots of chocolate and caramel malt in it, so it gives it a bit of body. And I'm actually drinking it myself here at the moment.
Drinking it myself here.
Cheers.
What makes an American stout an American stout, or American porter an American porter?
What makes it an American porter? I think the American porters tend to have a bit more hoppiness to them, and they're a bit bigger, you know. Whereas you get an English porter wouldn't generally be as in your face, you know. An English porter is more the chocolate malt and like a more sessionable type of drink, whereas I think the American porter is a bit more robust, you know, more full-bodied, and can tend to, because it's more full-bodied, you can get a bit more bitterness and more happiness into it. So that for me would be the definition, but I don't know, is it even a style, you know? Does porter?
I haven't. We were debating this Thursday, because when I tasted it, I actually really liked it, but I like stouts, so it was a stout that I could see myself drinking, but I couldn't pinpoint what made it American. I was actually almost calling it if it was a little bit drier, I would have called it a dry Irish.
Yeah, it's for me, a porter needs to have more the chocolate malt side of things and chocolatey flavor, whereas a stout would be a little bit more roasty, you know. That'd be everybody will argue with you about this. Like I'd say no two people probably agree on it, but for me, that's kind of in my mind when I'm thinking about it. If I'm making a porter, I want to put more of that sort of thing into it. You get a bit more sweetness and less dryness. Like with a stout, I'd expect it to be more kind of dry than the porter, but that's, I don't know, there's exceptions and rules to, you know, exceptions to all the rules. But
listen, and that half the fun is in breaking them, you know.
Yeah. But that's I think it's a nice one. We did low carbonation on that in the cans. That's because that type of body that's in it and the type of beer it is. I love, like yourself. When I'm in the UK, if I was over in England, I'd get the porters and stuff like that on cask. I love them. You know, I think that's nitro is only a simulation of that, really. You know.
Yeah. So then we move on to the Astral grains, which we a lot of our guys here would have had in can, and would have also, I suppose, had in growler now as well. You know, so that's a beautiful. It's 7.2% ABV.
Astral, 7.2. That actually started off life as 7.7. the first batch we did was 7.7, and we brought it down to 7.2, just purely because the process of making it in the brew house, with what we had, 7.7 was like really pushing it, and it was making it very hard for us to get the beer through the kit that we had. That was maxing the thing out to, really as far as it could go.
Yeah.
And so we had to drop it back. But I think it's nice at 7.2 anyway, and it's roasty. It's not. It doesn't, like, we don't go easy on the roast malt in it. Like, we put lots of roast malt into it. We put brown chocolate, roast barley, and like, I like the roastiness in it. I think that differentiates it from some of the other stouts where people are trying to make them less roasty. Some people, I think roasty is probably a Marmite thing in beer. Some people will like it and some people will hate it. And if you're trying to sell a lot of beer, you take out the things that people hate. You eventually get down to McDonald's at some point. If you keep on doing it, or get down to Heineken, or taste like nothing. It's inoffensive to everybody, but tastes like nothing. So that's its characteristic, is that roastiness in it. And that's the beer that I saw you putting something up on Twitter, was it yesterday, about it. That's the one that won the ICBI, or comes second in the ICBI competition there at the start of the year. That was the one where the ICBI is the Irish Craft Brewers organisation. So it kind of manages a lot of stuff from the point of view of the small independent brewers. And we just decided before Christmas that as an organisation, we'd run a little competition, pick a beer each and send it around to all the other breweries, and then the other breweries voted, all blind voting on it. And so the Porterhouse Around the Clock took first, and we came second. But I was happy enough with that. I mean, we put in a core beer, a beer that we've available all year round, and for it to kind of come out, like that by the other brewers was.
The fact it was peer reviewed, and it wasn't like all the other independent breweries, and we were up against a lot of people's specials. That seemed like a real win to us, all right.
Yeah, and half the price compared to the Porterhouse Around the Clock.
Yeah, that's it. We should charge more. But I was actually talking to Four Corners about this, and it's actually not. It's pretty similar price per litre as Guinness Foreign Extra, and that's Guinness. Like, that's the edge of it. Yeah,
so there you go. You'll have to relook at your pricing structure. So.
Yeah, we just need to get people hooked on it first.
So then we go up to the biggest of the four that we poured, which would have been the Rabbit Hole.
Yeah, Rabbit Hole. 8% is kind of the top, is topping out for us for IPAs in terms of strength that we can do at the brewery. So Rabbit Hole, we got really good hops at the start of the year from our hop supplier, and they were fresh. They were so good. Like, we got a whole load of hops in, and we said, right, let's do something a bit different with this. And I'm like I said earlier on, I'm a bit of an idiot when it comes to doing what the easy way is. I like making red ales and stuff like that. So I love trying to do, like, we do Idle, which is a real Marmite beer. Some people love it and other people hate it, right? But it's like an Irish red type of malt bill with a lot more hops thrown at it, right? That's the way I describe it. I find it very hard to categorize it as a red IPA or an Irish red, because it isn't either,
Yeah.
And Rabbit Hole was like, it's kind of me harking at that again, trying to persuade people that you can make a nice beer with a red beer. Some people just won't touch red beer. So it was a red IPA, and it was 8%. We got loads of fresh New Zealand hops. We've Nelson Sauvin and Motueka, I think, was in that one, and some Simcoe. Like, it was, the smell off it was unbelievable, like, in the brewery. And yeah, we just thought it was a bit different, something different. We're not trying to, like, we could have just made, well, we could try and make it, an 8% hazy IPA, but I mean, there's loads of them. I don't see the point, So we said, make something for the guys that want something that isn't hazy, So that's what we did, and we just wanted to do something a bit different. So I know it's, again, I think it's another Marmite beer. I think a lot of people will be, I know some people probably were disappointed when they popped the can open and found out it was red, But what can you do?
What can you do, indeed? Yeah, and it was funny because on Nocton had a comment up basically, saying that we wouldn't serve an 8% beer as a pint in the bar. We wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, that's,
you serve it, but in teeny glasses.
Yeah, I mean, at 8%, the most you'd probably get would be 2/3 of a pint. And we would definitely be encouraging 1/3 or half pints of it. And in fact, for one or two beers, when we've brought them in, we've actually put them in almost into wine glasses.
Yeah.
You know, and give it a wine measure of it, because it's just too much. It's, you know,
Well, I think you're better off. You put that into a pint glass, someone will drink it like a pint, you know, and it'll be messy, you know. For a pub, it's going to be a really messy evening.
Yeah,
for a reason.
Yeah, it makes our life difficult, you know, or more difficult. But not. I suppose not only that. Then I think the quality of it then does change, because at 8% up, you're quick to start but slow to finish. You know, and by the time you're getting to the end of it, it's not the same as it was in the beginning. It's starting to warm up, and it's been swirled around 100 times in the glass and all this kind of good stuff. So it definitely changes, you know.
Yeah, we've done a couple of 8%. We've done a few 8% IPAs. So we did Amplify before that during the summer. That was a pale one, and that was 8 as well. And that's kind of our top strength that we can do, but they're generally for cans. We put very little into kegs. You got a keg of Rabbit Hole, and I think the Franciscan Well in Cork got one, and that is it. Like I only did a couple in kegs just to have them there, because I knew, you know, somebody wanted a keg of it. So I didn't want it sitting around the brewery. Like you say, that stuff, you need to sell it fast. It needs to be fresh. You know, it's not something you want hanging around the place.
No, 100%. And I think, look, you can tell the difference very quickly if it's been sitting there for a while or not. And, you know, as I said, it poured really well. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Of the four, which do you prefer, Mark? And actually, Viv, which one is your favorite as well?
My favorite's Astral. It's easy. That's because that's often on top here in the man shed. So it's my little tip away, Mammy's little helper. Especially when it comes in at 7.2%. That's a good shit.
I like them all. But I mean, in terms of which one would I drink most often, it's probably Undertone. If I have it available to me, that's the one that I'm drinking, because I can have a few pints of it and it's grand. You know, it's 4.5% or something. So.
Yeah, but I love the Torrent too, and the Gigantic and the Giganticer. So like all the stouts and porters.
Yeah,
I'm just not into IPAs so much.
I've trained myself now to not be going at the bigger ones, because, you know, I've got work the next day and stuff like that. So, it's just easier. Yeah.
And you know what? Isn't it hard when you work for yourself? Because who are you going to ring in sick to?
And actually, days are over.
Yeah. Owen actually has just reminded us that we had Amplify actually pouring just after actually over the New Year. New Year around Christmas time. It went really well. Now I think it probably went a bit slower than we would have expected, but I think because it was a big beer, that people were just a little bit afraid of it. In particular, over the Christmas period, they were kind of going for things that were a little bit lighter, and you know. So I suppose you mentioned sessionable beers earlier on. Are there more sessionable beers on the cards?
Well, we're doing. You know, we've got a range of beers coming out at the moment called Electric Avenue, where we're using all these hops that we got. Only the freshest hops that we have are going into them, and they're around 5 to 6% beer. So the one that we've got coming out next is 5.3, I think. So it's pretty sessionable. Call it an extra pale ale. It's a little bit stronger than a pale ale. And that sort of stuff will be the happy light stuff. I don't know if we'll be making an awful lot of more dark beers throughout the summer, because
will you chance it through a few sours or?
Oh yes, for sure. You should do anyway. Like Mark is a home brewer, frequently made sours, proper sours.
Well, I've got some stuff in the tanks, but I don't think that'll be ready till the autumn at the earliest. We might do Saga again, and maybe add a couple of different fruits during the summer. I'm thinking about that at the moment. It's really just a matter of trying to figure out what sells. You know, if it's not going to sell, there's no point in me making it. And during the summer, you probably know yourself that, with the exception of Guinness, right, where Guinness drinkers drink it all year round, people move towards the lighter coloured beers in the summertime. As far as
you're coming away from your stouts and your red ales and things like that. So you're kind of going towards, as you say, the IPAs and even the sours. So yeah, you're kind of going lighter.
Yeah, and that's kind of the plan that we're working with at the moment anyways, to get those out. We've got a couple of other little bits and pieces, sessionable strength stuff that I want to do myself, one of which is another dark lager, a different one. But anyway, you'll be delighted to hear that. It's a happy dark lager this time. So
Oh, yeah, Astra sold well for us all last year. It's been pretty consistent seasonally.
I don't believe in this stout season stuff myself personally.
Well, in fairness, I think, as I say, a lot of people who kind of have a type of beer, whether it's a stout or a porter or even kind of, and they'll stick to that, whether it's midsummer or Christmas time or so, yeah.
What do you think yourselves with, there seems to be a lot more, well, there definitely is a lot more stouts available, like in the last year or so, I think, you know, and you've got the pastry stouts and stuff like that coming out during the summer all year round, import ones that I've seen. Do you find that there's any change in that direction? No, guys looking for the big stouts. Do you sell them at all?
That's a very good question. There is a move towards pastry stouts, and there is people are drinking them, like, you know, they're definitely going from. Is it something I think that will hold? I think it's a bit faddy at the moment. And I think that it's not something that will hold through the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think there's been a couple of big breweries, big Irish breweries, in terms of the craft world, that have released pastry stouts, and just by weight of who they are, it's kind of driven it on a bit and given it a bit of exposure. But I mean, like, bottom line on the whole thing is, right, how many of them can you actually drink?
Yeah.
You know, so
that's what it kind of comes back to, I suppose.
Yeah,
like you're going to have one and then move on to something else.
Yeah.
Or you're going to,
you know,
you're going to sit there and have 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, you're not going to sit down for an evening and drink, let's just say, a beautiful chocolate truffle pastry stout, you know, and have maybe 3 or 4 pints or 5 pints of it. Personally, I struggle even having a pint of it. You know, so I don't think it's going to go the way some people think it's going to go.
It cracks me up that in Florida it's such a big thing, you know. You think over there in the crazy heat, you know, and they're making pastry stouts in the summer, you know. But anyway, it's I find it fascinating. They are so heavy. Like, a lot of those beers finish out at the strength where we start, you know. So the amount of sugar that's left in them at the end is what we would start a beer with, like, you know. So, like, they're crazy things altogether. Potentially.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, the States is no place to really look at what they're doing, right? Because I mean, yeah, they're just, some of the beers coming out of there are absolutely off their head. Like, you know, it's not there's no sense to it as such. But yeah, look, I suppose I'm gonna say, why don't we open it up for questions for anyone who has questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering. Well, I'm a big fan of the dark beers and the red ales and that sort of stuff. But you're thinking of lighter beers for the summer. Would you maybe consider an amber ale possibly?
Yeah, it's not a style I'm particularly mad about myself. I've never really done many of them, but yeah, you never know. I've got a guy started working with me recently, and he's got lots of wacky ideas about what he wants to do. But, you know, he might do an amber ale for us and stick God knows what into it. But who knows? I rule nothing out, to be honest. I drink any kind of beer, and yeah, I'll probably get fed up with just very pale blonde beers by the, you know, I'll start off into the summer doing it, and by July I'll be going, we got to do something else, you know.
Yeah, lads, I was wondering, you use a lot of very interesting kind of New Zealand-based hops for your red IPA. And I was wondering kind of where the inspiration is going to go for hops. I suppose we don't see as often. They're kind of wine flavored, nearly hops.
Yeah.
In these beers, and I was wondering where the inspiration to go for hops like that came from, because it's something, especially in Ireland, we really don't see a lot.
Yeah, it's a good question. I like all the beers that we do. I'm generally trying to think of how will it taste at the end and work backwards. You know, so. I knew this was going to be kind of a sweet malty, between the alcohol makes it taste sweet and the maltiness with the red, you know, was going to make it sweet as well. So I wanted to get something in there that would kind of work well with that. And like I said, we'd got a whole load of hops in. We were smelling them all, and we just sat down and mixed up some of the hops in a cup. And just kind of ones we thought would work together, and they smelled good together, and we said, right, that'll work perfect with what we wanted to get out of what we wanted to cross in the beer, you know, to work with what was already in there from the malt. So that was the way that we went with it. But they're a bit harder to get, I suppose, in general, but they're available all right. New Zealand stuff, and there's a different harvest routine there as well. They're harvested because the hemisphere at a different time of the year than the American hops. So
They're doing their harvesting now, aren't they?
Yeah, you'll get those fresh at a different time of the year than you will the US hops. So I just want to use the freshest hops we can get. So maybe it'll be around this time around this time of the year that we'll be getting the hops out. I don't know. We'll see. There isn't too much science to it.
Roll in a cup and see what works. There's your answer.
All you're getting from them is the nose, and you just want to see what they're going to taste, what they're going to smell like, and if it matches what you think the beer should be like, then in they go.
And it's actually a good question, because I was watching the Beer House down in Cork do a weekly session called Houseflies. And they had Rascals on last night, and they were talking about the New Zealand hops, and I think the beer Betty, and I can't remember the other beer yet, but the New Zealand hops that they were using. John Noel, you have your hands. Oh, I'm putting them under pressure now. Yeah, we can hear you beautifully. Yeah, we can see you too.
I've got a microphone like you guys.
Oh, good man.
But seriously, I'm intrigued by some of the comments regarding these rather high ABV beers that you wouldn't want to serve in a pint glass. I notice when I go to London, that's quite common that you would get 2/3 or even sometimes 1/3 of a pint. Is it just a matter of time before we start seeing that in Ireland, or do you think that the beer culture is just really so much different that if it doesn't go in a pint glass, it's not going to sell?
I'll take that one. It's changing, John, and it's changing very quickly, I think. And there once was a perception that if you weren't drinking a pint, why were you even out drinking at all? Whereas we're now moving to kind of, you will have other options in bars now, which you never had before. So it's quite funny, because a lot of publicans would now know what a 2/3 of a pint glass looks like. Whereas go back maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 2/3 of a pint glass wasn't the thing, right? It just wasn't a done thing. Even down to 1/3 glasses.
Yeah,
1/3 that wasn't a done thing either. But they're becoming more prevalent, and you'll see it in a lot of bars who are pouring bigger beers, and who try to get in bigger beers to pour, that they will have the I suppose the correct type of glassware. And then you'll also see, and I mentioned it earlier on, wine glasses. You will see certain beers being poured as a wine measure. So I think give it another maybe. Well, I can't say give it another year or two, because with the pandemic, who knows what the hell is going to happen. Right. But I think 2 years from now, if pubs have been open for at least 12 months, I think you will see a little bit of an evolution in terms of beer drinking, and the type of beers and volumes of beers we would drink.
It is strange, the kind of fascination with the size of the serving. Same with the cans as well, the 440s and 33s, and why aren't they 500s and all that?
Yeah,
you could put it into a 500 can, but you're just going to charge pro rata more for it, or put it in a 33 and charge pro rata less. I don't really understand the kind of fascination with the size of the package. If it comes in.
I do.
Your kids are in bed, so you're okay. Lock the door, right? No, it's actually really interesting, because I mean, if it's go on holidays, right? And if you go to Spain or go somewhere hot or whatever, and when you go and you ask for a beer at a bar, the last thing they do is put it into a pint glass or a tankard, and it comes out it's a small pour, and that's just by virtue of the climate.
Yeah,
that beer heats up really, really quick. So they want to try and keep it as cool as possible, and we all quite happily go on holidays, and we take that for granted, and we do it. And it's only when we come back, then we kind of go, no, I want the big glass.
Yeah, pint.
You know what that is, Don? It's the macro guys have programmed us, that you have to have your pint, beautiful pint.
I was going to say it's fragile masculinity, but
no,
okay.
it's that's careful marketing, I think.
Well, look, either or, it could be a combination of all of the above. But I think we are moving and we are changing. Okay, Owen Naughton, you have your hand raised and you've been very patient. Owen, I love your background.
I'm always good for an all background.
You are, and I'm wearing my drinking cardigan tonight. This is the cardigan I wear when I go drinking.
Yeah, I'm just going to say on what John was saying there. Like when I was in Boston, I went to a bar, and it was kind of one of these local bars, but like they had so many taps along the back of the bar, and they actually had a menu. Like I thought when they handed me the menu, I was getting a menu for food, and I was like, look, I'm not hungry or whatever, but it was actually full of beer. And I ordered like a 9% chocolate beer, and it was so rich, but it came in like a little wine glass basically, because it was so like heavy. But that's beside the point. So I just wanted to ask Mark about, you mentioned when you were working as an engineer that you were like doing a lot of home brewing. So like if someone was to start out home brewing, like what kind of advice would you give, or what would you start them off with?
Starting from scratch?
Yeah. I have a shed down the back that I probably could use.
That's a good start.
The first thing to do is
No, Mark, I'm going to cut in there. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Not good for you, right?
No, come into us when we're open, and maybe we look after you.
You'll become a recluse. You'll have no friends. What you want now is you want to be able to come into the bar and buy beautiful beer as produced by Mark.
Or I could sell it to you guys.
Well, if you get that good, you could try, but I wouldn't try in the first place. So we'll move on, Mark. Don't give him any advice, right?
Oh, the rule with an iron fist here on this.
Well, I'll probably ask the guys down Dick Max for advice. So you're close to them.
I've told them to bar you, right?
Never gonna happen.
No, Mark, go on. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
If there's any guys that that are home brewing, is the best thing. Is just get in touch with them and get some advice if you know them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. There's a National Homebrew Club in Ireland, and they kind of run a lot of stuff, training and different stuff. And there's information available. Good to check that out. And other than that, start really simple. Like don't do a lager, right? Don't try to do a lager for the first 3 years. You'll make absolute puke, right? Make an ale. A stout is probably the best one to start with if you're going to do it, or pale ale, and don't get your expectations too high at the start. You gotta. It's like starting to cook. You know what I mean? You're going to make a few turkeys before you make something good. That's it. Just start simple.
Getting a kit and getting decent yeast instead.
Well, definitely, yeah. Throw away the comes with the kit and buy a proper sachet of yeast from the homebrew company or whatever where you're buying it, because the stuff that comes with the kits is rubbish.
So get her brewed, right? So Owen, get her brewed are a good source for most things. And if you drop them an email, they're actually pretty good to deal with. The Limerick Homebrew Club, if you check it out on Facebook, they have a nice group page there. They're good, and you might know Barry Kennedy that comes in here.
Oh yeah.
Barry's active with the Homebrew Club, right? And if you really are interested in doing it, get on to the guys, right? And homebrewing is fantastic, right? Because exactly as Mark was talking about upgrading the kit, and it came from Galway Bay to Rascals to themselves. The home brewers do the exact same thing, and kits kind of get passed on and moved around a bit. So just check it out. You'll find you'll get a lot of information very quickly, I think.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
No bother, Adrian.
Okay, a couple of things there. If you're going to homebrew your cell phone, do it. Definitely. I've been at it now. I've been pissing around with it for a few years. First attempts, man, you want to pour it down the sink, but sooner or later, you'll start to get the hang of it, and it's worth it. Second thing, I wanted to ask you guys about, the size of the glass. I definitely think it's it's psychology thing with Irish people going out for pints. It has to be a pint glass, So the thing is changing with people. All right, they're getting more used to the more smaller measures of beers, especially with the stronger stuff, because they know they can't drink it. They've learned that already, but it's changing, and it's all the better for it. But lads, I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned earlier on that you use all pellet hops. Which do you prefer to use? Do you prefer to use fresh hops or pellet hops? Was it leaf hops or pellet hops? What is your preference and why, basically?
I only use pellet hops now because, well, for US hops or New Zealand hops, you generally get a better access to the pellet hops. Mm-hmm. And for dry hopping or anything like that, I find that the pellet hops work better. So if I'm going to have hops in stock, I just use the pellet because I don't want to have a mix, because like I said, it affects the process for when we're brewing on the day and when we're dry hopping. If we have a mix of the two, it just makes life complicated. So we've just set everything up to work with pellets, and that's the way we work. Generally, the pellets we get are really good. So that's it. It's just, you can pick your one. I think Sierra Nevada, they're a huge brewery and they make great beer, and they've been going for yonks. And I think they still use leaf. So there's it's not a one thing or the other. And maybe if I was in the UK and I was brewing bitters and stuff like that, and I wanted to get fresh hops from the hop farm down the road, I'd be using leaf maybe. But we've no hops here in Ireland. Everything is coming in, so I just you can pick what you want. There's no one isn't going to be preferable to the other, and it's probably actually easier to get pellets at this stage than. And
do you find they hold better for storage wise, or do you keep them for very long before you use them?
Yeah, well, they all come in nitrogen flushed bags. At a commercial level, you're buying 5 kilos as a minimum size bag to get, and then we keep them all in the freezer until we were going to use them. So we don't buy an awful amount up front. We kind of keep it ticking over and work with our hop supplier. Loughran's supply us with most of our hops up in Dundalk, and we just work with those guys to know what's fresh coming in and what we have, and stuff that we know we really like. We'll pick up an extra bit of that and make sure we have it to hand. So that's it. I just don't want too much of it sitting around. I don't want to be there at the end of the year saying,
"Oh, fair enough." Yeah.
The hops have been sitting in there for the last 12 months. We haven't used them. I don't want that scenario. So if we don't get through them in 2 or 3 months, we've over ordered. That's kind of my approach.
Yeah. Cool.
How do you feel about hop oil? How do you feel about hop oil? Would you consider using hop oil or?
Well, there's a whole load of different extracts you can get. You can get isomerized hop extract, which is already pre-bittered, so you don't need to boil it. You can put that in on the cold side if the bitterness wasn't right or you want it for whatever reason. It's really for correction, as far as I can see, if you've missed something up in the brew side. So you can use that. I don't use it. We don't use any of them at the moment. There's the cryo hops and all this sort of stuff. The benefit of those sort of things is that they reduce your losses. Like for every kilo of hops that we put into the tank to dry hop it, we lose 10 kilos of beer, right? So it's really, like, dry hopping beer is a very expensive business, right? I get an order of hops in and I look at I just see the bill and I'm going, oh my God, the amount of, I could have bought a tank, I could have, and then 3 days later you're flushing it down the drain, so it's criminal. It's criminal. Anyway, to get past that and move on. But yeah, we haven't really. We're at a small enough scale. I'm just keeping it simple. Like I said, we're using the hop pellets only, and we dry hop with pellets only. We haven't used the cryo stuff. We haven't used any of the other stuff. But I don't have any fundamental objection to it. It just isn't really at our scale. It's not a huge thing. It won't make a huge difference to us. If we had, if we were doing 20,000 litre batches instead of 2,000, maybe you'd start looking at it. I just why bother introducing another potential banana skin into the process from my point of view.
Sorry, Adrian, I think you were going to follow up there. Sorry.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Hugh has his hand raised. Thanks, Hugh.
Hi, lads. First of all, I just want to say thanks for the no code on the tag tonight. So I just scavenged my code from Liam O'Brien. So thanks. That's why I'm late, or I've been banned. I don't know which one it is, but Just to kind of actually to
hang on, wait 1 minute. I've just muted Hugh, right? So if you're going to come on and complain, you know, you didn't get a code because we didn't want to invite you. That was simple as, right? You know? I can't. You can unmute yourself again. I can't unmute you from here. Sorry. I'll leave you alone. Ask your question.
No, that's fair enough. Like, what I was going to say, with Adrian's point about psychology with pints in Ireland, I think that's probably right. Like where I'm from, it's about value for money. Like you get a wine glass of beer and you think you'd be ripped off, you know. But anyway, my question is there a line that you will not cross? Like everyone asks about what's your ultimate pint. What will you not brew? What's your like? Where will you not go? I mean, we've had green ice cream.
Seltzers. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's a really low line. Like, you know, that's, you know, if you're doing that, right? Okay. No, there's a lot of stuff I won't brew, but I would definitely, like, if you see me doing hard seltzers, I've probably left the business and sold it to somebody because I'm not making that stuff, you know. You want that, you can have a vodka and lemonade if you want a hard seltzer, you know.
Just you as a pro tip, right? We travel a bit kind of to different bars and we enjoy a few beers and we kind of just would like to see what's going on. If you order a half pint or a 1/3, 9 times out of 10, the bar person will use the wrong glass and you'll get a hell of a lot more than you paid for. So going with the smaller pour does work to your benefit at the best of times.
I come from a country where you'd go back to the bar and ask for a top up if you got too much of a head on the pint, like, so that's the difference.
So someone in the comments earlier on said James isn't talking enough, but yeah, he doesn't. He's very quiet anyway. And then someone else asked, what is James drinking at the moment? So what is James drinking at the moment?
Apart from water, I'm actually drinking the Torrent. You know, so it's a good one. But in general, I think, like Mike, we kind of try and sample as much as we can, really. You know, but my go-to beer would be kind of a sour as well. Actually, I'm big into sours. But look here, because what we do, we try as much as we can. You know, I've no
what have you actually you've got? What did you get? You got during the week? You got cans during the week?
Oh, we got cans from Dot. Sorry, we got cans from Dot actually during the week. Yeah, so tomorrow now for the rugby, I think we'll sit down and try a couple of them. But the barrel aged stuff actually is good. You know, the barrel aged kind of across the board, it seems to be kind of the new fad at the moment. So that some of the stuff coming out is good. You know.
There's definitely a lot more barrel aging going on. I think
there is, yeah. Do you know what's
happening at the moment? So yeah, you're lucky.
So when you say sour there, James, are you talking about kettle sours or are you talking about the expensive stuff that?
Oh, it's as sour as you can get. Both. Yeah. Trolltunga now would be my go-to if I can get my hands in it. You know, from Buxton. It's Buxton, is it? Yeah. You know, but yeah, no, like sour. Look, you're coming into the summer anyway. Do you mean? So I'd love a good sour, but like that, I'd happily drink a porter or a red ale. Yeah, you have to try. Like you have to have an open mind. You know, I think.
So just to knock on, you 21 number 21 have sour from White Hag back in stock. To James's point, the sours that we kind of have been going for, because we're quite similar in that aspect of it. Atrevez from Sierra Nevada has been quite good, and is consistently quite good. The Trolltunga is really, really good. But then, like you're going into some of the Belgians, like, and it's just like, I mean, exactly as you said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's like whiskey, right? You could spend a fortune on some of them, you know, and you know, it's you sit down, you sup it, and it's great and it's fantastic. But I think some of those sours are for an occasion more so than an every day, every kind of.
Vivian used to think they were for every day, so I had to start. I actually started brewing sour beer when I was a home brewer because Vivian was like skinning me. Every time I went to the off license, she was putting in a request for like Creek and Goose and all this stuff.
Yeah.
2 bottles of that was 50% of my bill coming out of the office.
And you know, and it's funny, right? Because like if you look around at the moment, right, because one of the nicest saisons, right, one of the nicest kind of sour beers I've had in recent times has come from Western Herd, and it was through their home brew competition, and it's a cracking beer, like it really, really is, like, you know. No, it doesn't tick all the boxes in terms of a sour as such, but it's a right cracker. And then outside of that, then I think you're looking at some of the big boys, which would be Sierra Nevada, and I go back to the Ep05, like that's just like consistently that is a cracking beer.
Well, I presume you've had Saga as well, have you?
No.
Of course.
See,
Or more of a tart.
yeah, I'm going to say, right, Darren McGovern from Four Corners isn't on the call, right, because he cried off because he knows that we speak the truth here, and so he hasn't given us any of.
I will have to send down to you.
Look, we haven't had it. No, that's not to say we have had all the beers in Ireland, and we find it very, very hard to get through some of it. And in fact, we were on a bit of a conversation on social media this week. I think that Irish brewers have stepped it up another level again, in terms of what they're brewing since COVID-19 has kicked in, and it's probably because, exactly as you were saying, Mark, you get to focus on the beer and what you're doing and that kind of stuff. And I think that the quality of beer coming out of Irish breweries at the moment is second to none.
Yeah,
it's absolutely unbelievable.
It is. I used to go to the off license before I was, say 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd be picking up maybe a couple of Irish ones, and I'd be picking up a lot of American stuff and Belgium stuff. But now when I go in, I'm pretty much just picking up either maybe a couple of German lagers and some Irish beer. Like that's what I'm picking up. I got some American stuff recently, and I was really disappointed in it. And we'd crossed a line, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because I think it was the comments. One of the comments that came back during the week was that there was a time when you could count on your hands the good beers you could get and you'd go drinking, in terms of Irish brewers. Whereas now, you're more counting on the hands the ones that you don't want. Because there's such a good collection of them out there. So we've a question in. Would you consider brewing some lower ABV beers? Now, you mentioned sessionable a couple of times. Well, actually, just to level set, where do you see sessionable? What's a sessionable beer?
For me, like 4 to 5. 4 to 5 is sessionable for me. I think when you go below that, you're hitting challenges in terms of the flavour and kind of, for me, the satisfaction in the mouthfeel and the whole lot. Not to say it can't be done. There's plenty of people doing nice beers below that, especially the English. Like, they have a track record of making lower ABV beers. It's not something that I like. 4%, that kind of 4.5% is kind of my cut-off point. What I'll be making, because I like my beers to have quite a bit of flavour in them, and I think once I go below that, I kind of lose that, and it's not something that really does it for me. So, somebody who's good at that sort of thing can do that. Can't do everything.
Well, that's another thing you won't do is alcohol-free beers.
Stay in your lane. Yeah, stay in your lane.
Never.
Yeah. Look, you know what? We understand the need for alcohol-free beers, and I'll be quite honest with you. I think what some beer companies are producing, or what some brewers are producing and calling alcohol-free beers, is basically flavored tea. For all intents and purposes. Like, so I think an alcohol-free beer should be as close to beer as it can, flavor-wise and flavor profile, without the alcohol in it. But calling other things alcohol-free and just basically, I'm going to say it's tea. That's what it is. Like, it's definitely not the same. I think it's the biggest gimmick. It falls under alcohol-free gin. That's the other one that gets me. It's water. It's flavored water.
I gotta be honest. If I've the choice of, like, I'm driving and I'm at the pub for some reason and I'm not going to have a beer, I'll probably just have a cup of coffee. To be honest, that's just me.
Do you know what? Right? And I mean, I'm going to say I actually quite like Punk alcohol-free. Right, Punk AF is a decent alcohol-free beer. We had a really nice Czechoslovakian one in for a while. And I couldn't see how it was alcohol free, because it was as good as any beer that we'd get. Like, You know, so there definitely are a few really good ones out there. But
That was a free lager, was it? Check one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Got an intro Grand Cru. It was great. Like, you know, it was absolutely fantastic. You know,
I'm yet to be convinced, but I'll take a word for it.
I can look. I'm here drinking your beer now. I've told you that I corrected myself.
You're easily swayed. So
Okay, is there any more questions from anyone else? And if not, then we're gonna wind it up. Hugh's asking, did we see a day where we'd have a tap dedicated to low ABV beers? Yes, I do. I think that's more than just a fad. I think that's actually it's a lifestyle choice in terms of responsible serving of alcohol. I think that's I think it will be happening. It will happen. It is happening. I quite happily will support it. And we'll just see where it goes. But once the
beer is selling as well.
Once it's selling, but once it's good.
Once it's good, Jeff.
It has to be quality. We can't just have something for the sake of having it.
We've come to the end of Meet the Brewer, and we want to say a massive thank you to both Vivian and Mark from Lineman Brewing for joining us this evening. Our next Meet the Brewer will be the 10th of April, and we'll be introducing White Street Brewing. As always, thank you for listening, thank you for participating, and please support local.